And joining me right now is Texas Congressman Jody Arrington. He is a member of the House Ways and Means Committee and the chairman of the Budget Committee. Mr. Chairman, good to have you this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Good morning, Maria.
What is your sense of these negotiations? We understand that there is some common ground on clawing back the COVID-19 money that was unspent and perhaps some common ground on permitting as well as caps on future spending. Is that true?
Well, I believe it's true. I think we've got a lot of leverage to stop the spending and include fiscal reforms for once as we raise the debt ceiling. And that's only the case because Republicans in the House passed that proposal. Our Republican colleagues in the Senate have held the line and said, we will not pass a clean debt ceiling. We must have meaningful fiscal reforms. And here's the big one. The American people, 3 out of 4, including almost 60% of Democrat voters, expect the president and our Democrat colleagues to stay at the negotiating table until we have a responsible debt ceiling, which again would address the spending that has created this inflationary firestorm and the economic woes that you were talking about before this interview. So we're in a good spot, and we're making headway. And look, we've come a long way from President Biden not even returning the Speaker's call for about 100 days.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. But you've got a compressed calendar, right? I mean, look, you've got a couple of weeks until the Treasury Secretary tells us the country runs out of money. You've got several outstanding questions on these issues. Are you talking about a short-term extension of the debt ceiling by June 1st? Is that on the table?
No, what's on the table is the president responding to the proposal we passed. You know, he's tried to run the clock out. I don't think he thought we could pass a proposal. They're all very sensible, as you know, right-size the bureaucracy, rein in this spending, some of the most reckless spending decisions like lower income people, bailing out upper middle income families whose kids go to college. That's $500 billion. And then just staving off the barrage of regulatory attacks on our domestic energy. There's something in each category of limit, save, grow that will help us get out of this sustained recession outlook, and that will tamp down on the inflation that working families are struggling with. And that's the proposal this president has to deal with. Instead of looking for excuses and escape hatches, he's got to do the hard work of negotiating. That's what the American people expect, and I think that will be the outcome ultimately. I'm encouraged at this point.
So Joe Manchin said that the Senate should consider removing Senators Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz via the 14th Amendment. A group of Senate Democrats urging President Biden to consider invoking the 14th Amendment to address this debt ceiling. And you've got the West Virginia senator saying that he doesn't think it's a viable option and that Biden and Speaker McCarthy are doing a good job. Here's Senator Joe Manchin yesterday. Watch.
I do have faith. I think this is the way the process is supposed to work. You have adults in the room. They understand the consequences if we don't get it done. Give them a chance to do their job.
Yeah, but back in 21, he was saying remove Senators Cruz and Hawley because of their objections to the Electoral College results. Congressman, your thoughts on the 14th Amendment?
The 14th Amendment has been around since 1868. The debt limit legislation mechanism for Congress to respond and lift the debt ceiling has been around for 100 years. This does not hold any constitutional or legal water. It's another desperate attempt by this president and Democrats to clutch the blank check that's bankrupting the country. He needs to let that go and every other excuse go. Stay at the table, do the right thing, act responsibly, and listen to his Secretary of Treasury like we did, and move with urgency to get a responsible debt ceiling deal. These are just diversions. There's no sense in doing that. We've got a proposal. He needs to respond to it.
Tiana, jump in here.
In the next decade, as is, if Biden just got his clean debt limit bill, the national debt would be $51 trillion. The Republican bill would slash that by $5 trillion. So in the grand scheme of things, a pretty moderate proposal, right? Can you just help us game out how it would actually work if Biden does not ultimately agree to your deal, if he does try and go forward and listen to Senator Ed Markey, Bernie Sanders on this 14th Amendment deal? Do we just automatically just see credit downgrading across the board? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a good point. Even if he tried this strategy, which I think is unconstitutional for 100 years, again, nobody's ever deployed it for a reason, but the legal process would be protracted. There's not enough time. The markets would respond negatively, and we'd have the adverse economic effects of a default. So this is a failed and desperate strategy that he should abandon. And you're right, that we're going to add $20 trillion over the next 10 years in debt, half of which is interest payments. Right. Interest payments alone.
Well, you've got the power of the purse and the appropriations committees. Congressman, where are the areas that you would be willing to support holding back funding for certain agencies if, in fact, you need to budget?
Yeah, well, Maria, let's start with the fact that the the federal government has grown by 40% since COVID. Discretionary spending has grown over 30%, and CBO projected that we'd be spending in 19 before COVID. They projected we'd be spending hundreds of billions of dollars less than we're spending now. There's a bunch of waste, woke, and bloat that we can get after.
Yeah, that's a good point. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Jody Arrington in D.C.